a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. And I would like to welcome today's guest, Sasha Tuttle.
Hello.
So it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been quite a while. I can't remember when it was that I had you first on the show.
It was so long ago. I was still living in Chilliwack in the basement suite.
Oh, yeah. And it was outdoors. I think, didn't we were sitting outdoors somewhere. I should have looked it up.
I feel like it was on Zoom.
Could be. I forget a lot of things. So anyway, the reason why I want to talk to you is because you started something that was really interesting, the Wildlife Protection Club.
Right.
At the UFV. For those who don't live in BC, UFV is the University of Fraser Valley. So when did you start it?
Oh gosh, this takes me back. So I started at UFV doing my Bachelor of Science in 2016. And I think I waited about a year or two into the degree. So like 2017, 2018 to start the club.
Really? Okay, wow. I didn't realize it had been around that long.
Yeah, it's quite old.
So what was your purpose in starting? What made, no, not your purpose. What motivated you to start it to begin with?
Well, I just noticed growing up that when you say endangered species, the first thing that pops into people's mind is Bengal tiger, giant panda, these big charismatic animals that aren't even in our country. And then you say, well, what's an endangered species in the Fraser Valley? And people are like, we have endangered species here? Like, it's just never crossed their mind. And so I really wanted to bring that public awareness about. And it was just important to me because it was local and close to home.
Okay, so give us an example of some of those endangered species.
Oh, we have a set amount. We have, I think, one of our more iconic ones is Oregon spotted frog because Fraser Valley Conservancy works with them a lot.
Okay.
But I mean, we also have Oregon forest snail, mountain beaver. I don't think people realize barn owls are at risk. We have Pacific water shrew, which are like these little critters that live in the streams, and they look, I don't know how to explain it, kind of like a mole, but they have a tail and like they go fast through the water. They're so many unique species here that we're just really undervalued in the public eye.
Right, yeah. Now, I just think of, because the club is at the university, your membership must change quite a bit, right? As people graduate and new students start.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was there, I ran it with my boyfriend at the time, now husband. He was the money guy.
Right.
And I had a couple other members who were just people I met in classes and I was good friends with. But once it came to the end of the degree, for me anyway, I had to find somebody to pass it on to because really there was no other clubs at UFE doing what we were doing. And I just wanted to keep it going. So it went to a really motivated student named Sasha. But then he got really busy and then it got passed on to Molly.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know Molly was running it now.
Yeah, she's the new president. So
she didn't. Well, maybe she told me and I forgot. Wait a minute. Let's back up a minute. Married? Weren't you? I offered to be your flower elder. I couldn't be a flower girl because I'm too old.
We didn't do the ceremony or anything yet. I just.
Oh, okay.
We're common law.
Yeah. Okay.
We're getting there.
All right. So you're still gonna have me as your flower elder? Nobody's ever done that before. Just think about how unique that was. You know, I was invited to, sorry, I just got to go off on a tangent here. I was invited to another friend wedding and I said, can I be your best man? But he chose his father. It's like, seriously, what's wrong with people? Anyway, getting back to the club. Now, I had Molly on, right? And she did that the fundraiser event.
Yeah.
And it went quite well, didn't it?
It was amazing. And all of the years I ran the club, we never raised that much money. So I think she got up to like $4,000. And I mean, you'd think it's like, wow, $4,000 in a day, but she spent so long preparing for this event, contacting artists, gathering the art, like finding a venue, and then getting door prizes and entertainment. I'm just so pleased with how well the club's taken off. And like, since I've, no longer managed it, I still I'm on the sides if people need help, but
Sure.
she just does such a good job.
And it was your baby, so it's nice to see it do well. Like Molly told me now she's graduating, so she won't be there for next year, but she's hoping they'll continue on the same venue or same way that that fundraiser rather was done, you know.
Right.
And I know she said that she was kind of worried at first. She didn't know she would get the artwork donations that they were hoping for.
Yeah.
But she was blown away by the number of people who were willing to donate their work. Isn't that wonderful? Like there's so many people that we don't realize how many people can be very generous, you know. Anyway, let's get back to the little critters and things. You know, just thinking about with all these forest fires, it affects all kinds of life, not just our lives, right? People's homes burn, but people's homes can get rebuilt.
Yeah. Those
trees that all these little bugs or whatever it is that live there, you know, woodpeckers enjoy them and whatever they would take, they will be replaced, but it will take a long time for them to get to the maturity age.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So those, I don't know what happens to them. Do they die? They must. Or they just sort of find another spot somewhere?
I think that a majority of them will try to find somewhere else to seek refuge.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are always going to be some animals that aren't quick enough. And, that unfortunately will pass away in the fire.
Yeah. I mean, we're just, sorry, people, I hate to be a downer, but we're just destroying the planet, you know, and we're just so eager to do it, which makes no sense. Anyway, one of the things Molly and I talked about was the little toads at Rudder Lake.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I love those guys.
I used to live up there.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, there was another route to go where I lived. Okay. Other than, I can't even remember the roads, but anyway, but you'd get there and you didn't realize always that they were around, especially was at nighttime, right? You just see this movement and you'd end up unfortunately running over some of them, and nobody that I know of enjoyed doing that.
Of course.
So now I thought it was, was your club involved in building that tunnel?
No, so that was a joint project between Fraser Valley Conservancy and City of Chilliwack.
Okay.
But each year during the Western Toad Migration, the Conservancy will call upon volunteers to build toad fencing, like this temporary fencing that leads the toads to the tunnels.
Right.
They're not the smartest.
No, well, it's, you know.
So yeah. So I think Molly and myself have both worked directly for the Conservancy and probably volunteered with the fencing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you've another thing, I seem to remember a post of yours about the bees, something about the bees. That'd be a while back now.
I post a lot about bees. I think.
Okay.
Was it the mini presentation about why honeybees suck?
Could be. I mean, there's probably more than one, but
Yeah.
but tell us about why honeybees suck anyway.
I feel like when you say bee, everybody immediately thinks about the European honeybee, and the one that we imported here sometime in the 1800s.
Okay.
I have to double check that. Anyway, when we originally imported them, it was just for honey, but over the years, because of habitat loss, pollution, you know, our native bee populations have begun to decline. And when I say native bees, I'm talking about mining bees, sweat bees, bumblebees. There is a huge diversity of bees out there, but nobody knows, because the first thing that comes to people's mind is this totally introduced species of bee.
I didn't know. I didn't know about that.
I didn't know either.
I mean,
I started my master's.
I've always known about bumblebees because I remember seeing them. And when I lived there, I had a house on Market Street down by Williams, and I grew hollyhocks. They just took over.
Yeah.
And I loved it because those tiny little bees would just be all over the place. So I'd walk out and all this buzzing and stuff. They don't hurt anybody. They've never been stung. I don't know if they do sting, but I certainly never was.
There definitely are some other species besides the honeybees and bumblebees that do sting, but they're really not very aggressive, especially when they're actively pollinating.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go and you touch it and agitate it, it'll, maybe you'll get stung, but like most of the time they're very passive and they'll just fly off. I have gone up and directly tapped a bumblebee box with live bumblebees in it, and they just buzzed at me. Don't do that. I'm a professional.
Yeah. Don't do that at home, people. You have to know what you're doing. I mean, I wouldn't do that, obviously it's.
No, there's always the risk because they're animals. We don't know how they're going to behave, but they have these tendencies where it's like, okay, maybe I'm willing to accept that risk. Maybe I'm not. I would never go up and tap a honeybee box or a box.
Any kind of bee, because you don't know how they're going to behave, right? If you scare them or whatever, if they're protecting their queen or whatever it is they're doing, leave them alone. Let them do their job. I mean, sadly, like you said, there's so many species dying with the spraying of the fields and stuff, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And it's like, I don't know when they started making these sprays, whether they realized at that time that it was going to affect not only the bees, but all kinds of little critters, right? If they did, why did they continue? I mean, it just gets so, if you think about it too much, it gets too depressing.
Yeah, there's this really interesting debate with farming practices. So there's this concept called land sparing and land sharing. Land sparing is this idea that if I conventionally manage a farm and I'm going to grow my crop right up to the edge of the field. I'm going to spray herbicide like crazy so that no other weeds are competing with my crop. I'm going to spray fertilizer like crazy, yada, yada, yada. And I'm going to maximize my yield. I'm not really for that. Because if you think of it in a land sharing debate or kind of concept, it's like, okay, I'm going to grow my farm in an organic way. It's going to cost more, but you can actually, there are benefits to your crop yield. Yeah. So if you manage say a blueberry farm in a conventional way and you bring the honeybees in when your flowers are open, then you take them away when you're spraying, that's fine. But honeybees actually are not as effective of pollinators for certain crops as wild bees.
Okay.
And so the farmer thinks that they're maximizing their yield, they're getting all these berries, but really what they're doing is sacrificing quality for quantity. And you'll notice this. If you go to the store and you buy a big bag of frozen blueberries, I would bet most of them are going to be small and not very good. Right. If you go and you go to an organic or close to it, right, like a more organically managed farm, and they're selling blueberries on the side of the road fresh, they're probably the big, plump, juicy berries. There's a reason for that.
Okay.
Like they're so I really like to advocate for diversification of farmland, and that can look like either a flower strip on the margin or like intercropping between your blueberry rows with clover and grass or some other flowering species. And that will help attract wild pollinators. So it's helping with conservation measures of our wild bees, and it's helping the growers with getting those pollination services. So they don't have to pay for the honeybees as much, or,
Yeah, right. It's interesting too, because while you were saying that, I was just thinking about the different taste in hot house vegetables or fruit grown in a hot house as opposed to grown outside.
Oh, yeah.
There's definitely a better taste of anything that is grown outside that is meant to grow outside.
Right.
So when you get, especially I found strawberries are the worst when they're like hollow almost in the center, because they want them to grow fast and they want them to grow big.
Yeah.
So you're losing something. Right? I mean, it's like, it takes them a long time to realize that. It seems to me anyway. People are slow to change back to what works best.
Yeah, it's really funny because, traditional farming, at least from an Indigenous perspective, there was this farming technique. I don't know which or which band or group came up with this, but it was like the Three Sisters method, where they'd have corn or like some tall growing plant, peas, and like some other vine plant, and like they had this system down pat where they realized if we diversify our farm a bit and we grow these three sister crops together, they all benefited each other.
Sure.
Yeah. I wish I remembered more about it, but
well, people can look that up, because I know like there's what they call companion plants that are good to grow beside each other.
Yeah, but it's just in recent years, it seems like farmers are shifting away from that to these giant monocrop fields that really, come with their own costs. and are harming, conservation efforts of bees and other small critters. Like, I don't think people realize that agriculture areas are not their own isolated thing. Like, they're part of an agro ecosystem, and
Sure,
they
yeah.
support a lot of species besides bees. I've worked in Delta, and I've worked on the farms, and I've found Pacific sideband snails. That's a native species of snail.
Okay.
I've found frogs.
Yeah. Right.
In between the rows during flooding, we found a marmot at one of our fields, and it was like close to a urban, or like a city, like, and a dump. And it was only once, but we were in awe. Like, what is this marmot doing in the middle of Delta in a blueberry field?
Right. Yeah. Wow. I remember years ago, like I grew up in a small town in northern New Brunswick, and my mother always had a vegetable garden. And one thing I remember when it was moist, the little toads would just show up. And I couldn't help wonder, where did they come from? They weren't there yesterday. Like you said, they weren't there yesterday, but they're here today. What were they eating? By the way, what do toads eat?
Oh, all the same things: frogs, any small little worms, bugs, crickets, whatever they.
Yeah, right. So now, like you said, you studied science, right?
Yeah. So I did the Bachelor of Science at UFB, and then at UBC, I've been working on a Master of Science in Zoology. So like animal behavior and ecology and stuff.
So what is your ultimate goal?
Well, when I started this educational journey, I wanted to come out of it as a registered professional wildlife biologist, like somebody who works at a consultation company that you would approach if you want, research on a species done, or like, maybe you're like, hey, I want to develop this area. Can you check if there's endangered species here, or something like that.
Right.
What I'm doing right now is I just started a job at the Stoller Research and Resource Management Center as a senior researcher, which sounds funny because I'm 24.
So senior researcher. Yeah. But that's pretty good though, isn't it? I mean, to have that position.
Yeah. So I think what really happened is that during my master's, I ended up getting a lot of experience conducting and managing research, and it kind of built up my resume for a position like this. So I'm still helping in conservation, but with a lot, instead of focus on just collecting the data, also analyzing it, reporting it, and like working with, I guess it's less of like, if I worked, how is it different? I feel like a lot of biologists, they go out there and they say, okay, I found this frog here, and they write that on their report. I go out and I come up with some sort of research question about that frog, and I'll do statistical analysis with the data, and like, it's a little bit more advanced.
Right. Yeah. It's not just so cut and dry. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I happen to know a doctor, somebody who's a doctor of biology.
Oh, yeah.
A friend of mine, and it's that same type of thing. Like, she doesn't just, it's not just about this or this. It's more studied, more detailed, like you said, right? So it makes a big difference. It's research.
Yeah.
And then she does the lectures about it too, as well. So it's really kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I just. When we're walking on the grass or something, we don't usually think about the snails. Or I know people that when they have gardens, their own garden, they don't want to see a slug or a snail because it eats their whatever it is they're growing, right? So you don't want to do, you don't want them to eat your food. Although I always say to critters, I'm willing to share, but leave me some, right? You don't have to be greedy. Just, here's your share, here's my share. I'll take the bigger share, thank you.
Yeah.
But because there's so many of us, we're so populated that we have to grow all of this food, and we want all of this, land taken up growing, like, and sorry, I'm just going off. I know that there's a lot of manipulation of fruits and vegetables, right? Yeah. Which, it has some cause and effect.
Yeah.
And they find out after the fact, oh, this is going to be a great idea. Let's try blah, blah. Doesn't necessarily work well, So, because sometimes I look things up just for fun.
Yeah.
Don't retain a lot of it. but, at the time it was fun. Sorry, this is your interview, and I talk too much sometimes with some of the interviews, but It's been great though, because I really like the fact that you're so engaged in what you do, you know, so that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm really passionate about it. Like I always have been. I just grew up with the feeling that I have a responsibility to conserve the environment, like the at-risk species here. And that's just always how I felt about it. It's funny when you come across people who are like, yeah, I don't care. It's like, but it affects us.
Yeah.
It really does. Like we need to care about our air quality, our water quality, and like the biodiversity of our environment.
Absolutely.
You know, because one day maybe the bees diminish so much, and then the honeybees aren't sustainable for us to rely on either. They've been affected by different parasites and viruses. And like on one of our farms that I was studying, the farmer paid to have rented honeybee hives present. They just didn't pollinate. I don't know why. We went and we surveyed and we walked up and down the rows, 1 or 2 bee visits, and they were all circling around the hive. And we measured the difference between the number of fruit produced by, you know, just these open bushes and ones that we pollinated by hand. So we knew they got the maximal pollination, and we found a huge pollination deficit. This farmer was losing, like there was at least a 20, just off the top of my head, like a 20% minimum difference in yield between these like bushes. It was nuts. And like, I just, I don't want to see us get to the point where we don't have any bees left.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, people don't realize how important they are.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you know, it's like, I think about like every little critter, you know, I've had a tree full of aphids. I had a cherry tree full of aphids. Then all of a sudden I see the ladybugs come and eating, you know, getting at the aphids. And then the big ants would come and get, you know, and I thought, well, this is that cycle. It's so fascinating and it's necessary, right?
Yeah.
We're the ones that ruin cycles. I'm going there again. But I want people to think about it. You know, this is why I like having people like you on the show, because of your knowledge, and people need to listen and pay attention. And like, we need to share the land with everybody and everything that lives, right? You know, I mean, rocks aren't important necessarily, except that some creatures live under rocks.
Yeah.
So it's important for them, you know, just things like that. Anyway, so one final question. What is it you would like people to know? Is there some special thing you would like people to just think about or know?
I think the biggest thing is that that people should know that we're not at a point where all hope is lost. You know, that yes, you know, we as individuals have a limited effect on our environment, but every little bit in my eyes counts. And I think the biggest thing people can do is diversify their property. I know that's hard when you live in an apartment.
Yes.
But there's a lot of homeowners out there with just a big grass lawn and like all these trees that don't belong to this area, and our native species can't do anything with that. Like these people that plant bamboo. We don't have pandas here. What's going to eat that bamboo?
Yeah, right.
No, there's plenty of resources online about what plants are native to this area, and you know what plants are pollinator friendly and will help the bees. If you want to diversify your land, the best thing you can do is plant a bunch of flowering species, and that can include crops too. If you want to take a bigger role in like food security. But if you're going to plant crops, just plant a variety.
Yes.
And you might even find that if you plant some peppers in your yard or a blueberry bush or whatever, and beside it, perhaps you plant some mint and some lavender, you might find you get some big, juicy blueberries and peppers.
Yeah.
It's
interesting. Yeah, it did. It's interesting because one of the things when you mentioned lawn, like I mentioned this, why do we have to have a lawn? So what? We're in an apartment building. So what? Why does that? Well, it looks nice. Of course, it looks nice when it's growing. We've had a dry summer, so you can see it's all. And I say, don't water the grass in the summer. Don't water. The first rain, it'll start growing back. Yeah. It's never dead like you. I would wish it would die, because then we'd have to replace it with something like there's the guerrilla gardener. She advocates, you know, like you were saying, they'll grow things that that help
Yep.
the soil, that help the critters that grow, that live on the soil and whatever like that. So I would like to see us do something other than have grass, but I have no control over that.
All right.
Anyway, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it. And remember, I'm ready to be your flower out there at your wedding. Just think about it. Thank you for watching the show, everybody. I do go off. Yeah, as you hear, I do go off. But I was really pleased that Sasha Tuttle was able to join me, because it is important. Like, this planet is ours. It belongs to everybody. You know, we do have a say, even though we think we don't. We do have a say. It doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to big business. It's everybody's planet. And it's the only one we have. There you go. I know they're trying to looking at Mars and stuff, but come on, you know, let's be logical. Anyway, so thank you for being on the show. Thank you for watching, and be nice even to the ants. And take care, everybody, and peace out. Oh.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see.